What's up, YouTube? Hope everybody is doing well. Today I am back with another video. Today we are going to be talking about the top 15 best PlayStation 1 games. I figured I'd do one or two more top 15s and then retire this series. I know I said in the last video I was going to retire it. Then I saw the amount of top 15, top 20s I did, and I just felt like it'd be wrong not to cover a PlayStation 1 list, seeing that I did a PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and a PSP list. So I'm going to do a top 15 for the PlayStation, the original PlayStation. I don't have a lot of these games, so I had to write this down on paper so I wouldn't forget anything. But I put the first four up here. It was really hard to do that because I feel like I'm leaving some other titles out. But the first four for my list is the Crash Bandicoot trilogy. Crash Bandicoot 2, The Wrath of Cortex, or Cortex Strikes Back, rather, and Crash Bandicoot 3, Warped, and also Crash Team Racing. They were all really great Crash Bandicoot games for the original PlayStation. One's a racing game where you race around the tracks and you try to beat your opponents. And you got Crash, you got Coco Bandicoot, you got N, Jin, you got Dr. Neo Cortex, you got that polar bear dude, you got Crunch, you got Coco Bandicoot, and you got a bunch of other characters and just race around the tracks. And then the other three, which are platformer games, where you play as Crash Bandicoot and you go through the levels with him and Aku, and he kind of helps you out in the game. And you can take like 2 hits before you're dead. Possibly 3 sometimes. It's 3. It's a really good series. There's lots of a lot of jumping you gotta do. You gotta watch out for the TNT in the game and that green thing, because if that hits you, that can kill you as well. There are stages that have like these secret levels where if you get there, you can get over 100 apples and get an extra life. Yeah, that was pretty cool, finding those and scattered throughout the levels as well. But all in all, they are must-owns if you have an original PlayStation. Or if you own a PlayStation 2, you could pretty much play all the PlayStation games on a PlayStation 2. And a lot of the titles also work on a PlayStation 3, no matter what model you get. So I recommend those. Those are some of the best games on the system. Number 5 here we have... oh yeah, I also want to show, before I get into that, I want to show you this, since I have Crash Bandicoot 2. And it does work, thankfully. Problem is, a lot of my PlayStation 1 games, they are too scratched up and they do not play. When I was moving back up here, a lot of them got scratched up in the process of moving, and they just simply will not play in my PlayStation 2, so I can't play them. But this one works, and like I said, great game. Okay, moving on to number 5. I had a lot of nostalgia playing this game as a kid. And I don't understand why some people don't put this on their list, because all 3 of the Spyro games are great. Spyro 3, Year of the Dragon. Excellent game. Came out 23 years ago. Still a blast. You can get this on the Spyro Reignited trilogy for PlayStation 4. And that game's a blast to play too. Although, I don't know why you have to download this game and the second game. It's pretty stupid. But admittedly, the graphics in that look a lot better than they do on these, because the grass looks more real and just the levels look a bit more colorful. But going back to these is not a hindrance. If you don't like downloading crap, then you can play it this way. And it really is a great game, Spyro Year of the Dragon, or Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon, rather. And the other two games, Spyro the Dragon and Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage, are also excellent. Okay, number 6. I mean, I thought the first Twisted Metal game was kind of rough around the edges, to be honest. Going back to it now, it's definitely rough. And the controls are terrible. So I didn't put the first one up there. I played Twisted Metal 2, 3, and 4 as well. Personally, I think Twisted Metal 2 is a better game. That was the first one that was actually really good for the Twisted Metal series, so I had to put Twisted Metal up there. And what Twisted Metal is a car combat game where you play as Sweet Tooth and a bunch of other characters. You go through the level just smashing shit and blowing up cars, and you get guns in your car since it's a vehicular combat game. And it's just a blast. It really showed that car shooting games can be done well. And really, there weren't that many back in the day, except that and Vigilante 8. But did a really good job. It's really revolutionary for its time. It's a shame that we haven't had a Twisted Metal game and since the PlayStation 3, really. We should have another Twisted Metal game, but Sony's not really focusing on it, unfortunately. But Twisted Metal 2 is a good game. Number 7 is Parasite Eve. Parasite Eve was a good game. Had a lot of horror elements in the game, but it was also a JRPG where you play as Aya Bria, and she's like the main character you play as. And it's like you gotta fight this lady in the game. And the graphics do look colorful. They're very dark though because it's supposed to be kind of a horror RPG. So it's supposed to catch you off guard a bit. I will admit a few times I got scared playing it. I had to sell Parasite Eve. I don't have it. I remember finding it at a dollar place, Salvation Army years ago for $1. And man, was I happy when I got that game because at the time it was going for $30. I tried to get that game back last year, but it was around $100. I just did not want to pay $100 for a complete copy of Parasite Eve. So I passed on it. But it is a really fun RPG game, and it's definitely one that I recommend you guys check out if you have a PlayStation. Now, number 8 is Resident Evil 2. That game has been ported to so many different consoles. PlayStation 4, PlayStation 2. Oh no, not PlayStation 2. PlayStation 4 was definitely one that got ported on. And it was a remake and it was updated with the visuals and the gameplay was a little bit different. But it was originally on the PlayStation and the N64. And I think it was also on the Sega Dreamcast. And it just was a really good survival horror game that everyone talks about, everyone knows about because it's such a legendary game. Take the premise of a bunch of zombies trying to take over the world in a zombie apocalypse, and the survivors is Leon and Claire Redfield. Leon Kennedy, that is, and Claire Redfield. And you go throughout the levels and you shoot zombies and you collect stuff. And you look for other survivors in the game. And it's a really good game. I recommend it. Number 9. Oh yeah. There is no brainer. It was a no-brainer rather. Final Fantasy 9 here. We have Final Fantasy 9. I have it right here. But I'm also tying in Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 8 because they're also great games. It's my list. Keep that in mind, guys. I can do whatever the hell I want. So 7, 8, and 9, Final Fantasy. All great RPG games. Definitely must owns. If you have an original PlayStation, definitely worth checking out. Between the three games, you probably get in like 75 to 100 hours easily. It took the time with these games back then. They didn't like half-ass shit and make fucking um, shitty ass campaigns that were only like 5 hours long or 4 hours long. No, they actually took the time to make this game. I will admit, I did get pretty far in the game, but I got stuck at a certain part of boss that was fighting me and my other friends, and I just could not beat it and gave up. I really should go back to this game and give it another try. Try to beat that part, see if I can beat this game, because really the only Final Fantasy game that I recall completing was Final Fantasy X. And that game even was really hard later on in the levels to beat. It took me probably a year to beat that game because of how hard it was. I got to one part where I just couldn't beat it. Got stuck and I got so frustrated. I was like, fuck it. Turned it off. I ended up having to use YouTube cheats, see that part of the game online. And I don't see anything wrong with doing that because if you can't get past a certain part of the game for so long, why not? You want to beat the game, right? How else are you going to beat it? Anyways, Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 for the list. Excellent games. Can't recommend them enough. Definitely worth checking out if you have an original PlayStation. Alright, now number 10 is... I was going to put Heart of Darkness up there, but I don't think it really belongs in that spot quite. Not quite, but it is underrated. So number 10 is Metal Gear Solid. We all know that Metal Gear Solid has to be on the list if you have an original PlayStation. It's just a must own. I think the game currently is going for about $40 to $50 on eBay. Might want to snag a copy if you don't have it. You better do it before it starts going up even higher in price. $70, $80, $90, $100 for a copy complete, which is bullshit, but you know, I know that game hunting is really going up, especially on the retro consoles. And it's just ridiculous, but the game is very fun, and it's a stealth game, and you play as a guy named Solid Snake. You go through the levels, sneaking around corners and certain areas, and you do have to shoot people at times and cause them to go night-night, and then you walk past them, get to point A to point B. It's basically the premise of the game. And it's a really good game. And it really showed that the Metal Gear Solid franchise is so good that it's going to stay around forever. They're already working on Metal Gear Solid 6 because they know how good the game is. So I recommend it if you have an original PlayStation. Number 11 is Heart of Darkness. Heart of Darkness is a great game. I remember playing this game at a friend's house. Her name was Chris. Back in the 90s, me and Terry go over to see Chris and her roommate. No, they were not girlfriend and girlfriend, nothing like that. They were just roommates. She had a PlayStation and a bunch of games, but I wasn't allowed to play M-rated games, and she was one of those people that cared about what my parent said. So I played games like Gran Turismo 1 and 2, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, and I remember playing Heart of Darkness, and I remember it was pretty good, pretty fun game. But you know, when I got older, like around like when this YouTube shit came out, later on I started looking up PlayStation videos trying to find out what that game was, because I remember a kid and a dog, and he had like this gun, went, and he was shooting these black shadow characters in the game, and I was trying to think, what is the name of that game? So I had to dive deep into the PlayStation videos to find out what that game was. And yeah, it's called Heart of Darkness. And I remember as a kid, and I remember how much fun it was. And it was like a great side-scrolling shooter. You know, you were going this way, and you were shooting stuff, and you're trying to rescue one of your lady friends. boy is no older than like I think 8 or 9 years old. The only help you really have is the dog. The dog barks and attacks the shadow characters in the game. But it was done really well. It's very creative, the level designs, and there was some parts where you had to jump over things. I just really enjoyed it and thought it was a really good game. So I recommend it. Number 12, I do have number 12 here. It's 007 Tomorrow Never Dies. I could have also chosen The World Is Not Enough, but I have that game on N64. I don't have it for PlayStation 1. But this is a good shooter, good game. It's only a one-player one. It's not like World Is Not Enough. So if you had a PlayStation, you're looking for a shooter, there's this, there's Medal Medal of Honor Underground. And there's also Quake 2 and Disruptor and the Rainbow Six games. So yeah, and then you had this, and The World Is Not Enough, and it's just a really good game based off a pretty good Bond movie. I thought it was pretty good. If there was any hate on the Tomorrow Never Dies movie, please let me know in the comments below, because personally, I liked the movie. I thought it was pretty good. And the game was a good licensed game, and it's underrated. If you look up gameplay on YouTube, you can see for yourself. It is a first-person shooter game. It's really good. Okay, now number 13. I'm looking at my list again. I'm sorry. If I'm looking down like that, it's just because I'm looking at my list. Because I didn't want to screw up my count, and I also did not want to not remember any games. So, oh yeah, was that number 13? I think that was number 12. Yeah, I think that was number 12. Number 13 is Death Trap Dungeon. That game I also do have loose disc. It's in my case somewhere. I remember playing that as a little kid. I was at an old friend's house. Alicia was her name. And me and Alicia used to play games together. She had like Tomb Raider. I'm not sure which one she had. I know there were 5 Tomb Raider games in the PlayStation 1, but she had one of them. Crash Bandicoot, Spyro's, a couple of the Rugrats games because she was a big fan of Rugrats, Bug's Life, and Death Trap Dungeon, and I think 1 or 2 other games. But I remember that game being like a beat 'em up style game. There were parts of the game where you're in a dungeon, you gotta beat up the bad guys. They're like these knights with swords and shit, and it was just really fun. Parts of the game where you had to get stuff to unlock a door, like a key or something, so you had to like backtrack a little bit to get further in the game and progress. It was just a really good game. I recommend it, and it's underrated, I'd say. Number 14 is no, we're at number 13. I'm sorry if I screwed up my count. Time Crisis. Time Crisis is a really fun game. I remember playing it when it first came out in the arcades. It was nice to see they ported it to the original PlayStation. They later on did port the Time Crisis 2 and 3 game to PlayStation 2, and Time Crisis 4 was ported to the PlayStation 3. And I know there's also Time Crisis 5. I don't know if that's on PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5. I'm not really sure. But the original Time Crisis game was a shooter game where you play as 2 cops trying to save hostages and kill the bad guys. And it was good on the PlayStation. It played well. The only thing that was a pain was the time limit. You really had to beat certain sections for the time limit to increase. So you had to be kind of fast, but at times it was kind of hard to be fast when you got all those enemies shooting at you. But all in all, I thought it was a pretty good game. I recommend it. Number 14 is 3 Extreme. That was a pretty fun like sports game. It was kind of like Road Rash, except that you weren't on motorcycles. You were on rollerblade skates, or roller skates rather. and you were like racing down a pathway, and like you get to hit people with like clubs and bats and stuff, and you could even like when they get in your way, you could like soar in the air and then jump on them and then throw them off course so you get in first place. 3 Extreme was a pretty fun extreme sports game. I was really surprised by that game. I didn't think it would be very good. And number 15 is this Star Wars Dark Forces. This was a pretty good shooter on the PlayStation. Unfortunately, my copy is super scratched up, as you can tell, so it doesn't work, unfortunately. But it was a pretty good game. The only drawback was the graphics were horrible. I mean, those graphics looked like ass. They didn't even look like PlayStation 1 graphics. They looked like NES graphics. That's how bad they looked. But other than that, this was a pretty fun Star Wars shooter game where you play as a stormship trooper and you go through the levels to kill insects and these weird other creatures in the game that you would shoot. I don't remember their names, but I know they had names in the Star Wars franchise, but just blanking out on their names. But it was really good. I recommend it. It was a lot of fun. Definitely worth checking out. That's my top 15 for the PlayStation 1. But of course, the honorable mentions section has to be here as well because there's so many great games on the original PlayStation and on game consoles in general. So, some other ones that I recommend is Tekken 3. This is a good game. Sadly, my copy doesn't work, too scratched. Tekken 2 and also the original Tekken. They're all available on PlayStation 1. Rest in peace to Dave Mirra. Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX. Man, you could still play this game to this day and still have a blast playing with your friends trying to get a high score or free skating to see who has the best run. Um, there was something else you could do in the game. I think there was a tag mode in this game. It was really fun. And even the single player campaign in this game is really fun. Just, when you're bored, just go around the level and do tricks. You know, do these like 360 flips and all this other these other tricks that you would do in the game. It was just a blast to play. I loved it. A lot of fun. Monopoly, the original Resident Evil, the director's cut, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, also great games. Twisted Metal 3, Twisted Metal 4, and I am also going to put Twisted Metal 1 on here because it's still a good game, just that it was really rough around the edges going back to it now. Tomb Raider 3, I'm only putting Tomb Raider 3 up here because going back to those games, the Tomb Raider games are really hard to play. Like, those controls are terrible. Going back to them now. You gotta play the newer Tomb Raider games to get some enjoyment out of them. Too Extreme, NBA Live 99. I know I'm gonna get some hate if I don't put at least one sports game up here. But you know what? I'm gonna throw another sports game up here, which would definitely make Anthony Chobot Does Pop Culture happy. WWF Warzone. The game was released on the N64 and the PlayStation 1, and it's just a blast to play. Namco Museum Volume 1 and Volume 3. I don't know why we never got Volume 2 over here. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but they're fun. You get a bunch of classic arcade games like Pole Position, Dig Dug 2, Galaga, Galaxian, Miss Pac-Man, Pac-Man, and Rally X. And I think the Tower of Droga. Really fun. You might even get Dragon Spirit on there and Mappy. Or you could just get the PlayStation 2 version, whichever one. You don't really need to own all the Namco Museum games. I also think that Crash Bash was a pretty good Mario Party ripoff. And of course, the original Spyro and Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. and Jade Cocoon, Chrono Cross, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1, 2, and 3, and also 4, but probably want to play 4 and 3 on PlayStation 2 or something, or Xbox. Um, and then I also do recommend Castlevania Symphony of the Night and Silent Hill. Those are some of the best games that you could get on your original PlayStation if you have a PlayStation. And I also do recommend the Siphon Filter games. They are excellent shooters as well. And Medal of Honor Underground, also great. So those are some of the PlayStation games I recommend. Please let me know in the comment section below if you enjoyed this video, and please leave comments. I do appreciate any comments as long as they are not rude and disrespectful. If they're rude and disrespectful, you will get banned. Other than that, I don't mind the compliments. Keep them coming. I respond to all of my comments. I try to. And I enjoy the conversation about your favorite games. List your top 10 or your top 15 on my channel. I don't mind. And anything else you may want to talk about. And thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you guys enjoyed my list of my top 15 best PlayStation 1 games. God bless you and have a great day. Peace.